We read primarily for us in this academic area. We read, or reading leads to academic success. Why do we say that? A student who is a good reader is more likely to do well in school, right? Or a student who wants to read or likes to read is more likely to do well, because at the end of the day, at the end of the lecture, you sit back, you study, you read your notes, you have time that you read, you have time that you also do your private reading. And so the likelihood that you engage with your notes, you engage with reading materials, you go to the library and read outside what your lecturers have taught you, makes you a good student. So there is no way a question will come that you might not be able to answer, or use the knowledge you have acquired through reading from somewhere to be able to answer these questions. Again, reading helps you to acquire new vocabulary. Very, very, very essential. I always tell my students in class that all the time reading has been with, if I'm in biology, all I read is biology. If I'm in social studies, all I read is social studies books and all that. So it doesn't open us to acquiring new vocabulary. But we must read outside our course areas or programs. We must take time to read novels. If it's in person, your lecturers will ask you, how many times have you read a story? I mean, since you even finished SHS, or you've been at home till you have gained admission into the university, and even to our continuing students. When was the last time you read a storybook, something outside your course or program? So in reading, you acquire new words, and in acquiring these new words, you use them to speak and you use them to write, and that is what reading does for us. You come across words that you have never encountered before, you check the meanings from the dictionary, and then you use these words in everything that you do. So most importantly, reading helps us to acquire new vocabulary. And then also, reading provides the foundation for all other learning, like writing, like speaking, like studying, and all those things. So as I said, if you read outside the context of your program, if you read outside the context of your courses, you gain new vocabulary, and that is the foundation for other learning. You also learn other things. You don't confine yourself to only the things that you came here to study. So you must know a little bit of everything around you, because the idea is that when you're in the university, everybody thinks you know everything. And so a child might walk up to you and ask you, sir, madam, this is it. Do you have any idea? And they are so expectant, so they think that you must know something about it. And so in reading, it also opens up to other forms of learning, which is very, very crucial in our day-to-day activity. I hope you are with me. Yes. So we have come to understand what reading is: extracting relevant information. Of course, it's not, when we are reading, it's not everything that we are picking. We are picking the most important things from the reading material that we are going to use. So extracting relevant information from a written text. We have understood that reading is a process. It's part of our day-to-day activity. Reading does not end. It doesn't end. So far as we have breath, we have life, we'll continue to read. Because if someone sends you a text message, if you open your socials and you go there, you read. So it's a process. It's part of life. It is a skill that must learn. You must learn the act of reading. And so you use it in everything that we do. We have also looked at the importance of reading. Now let's look at the types of reading that we have. What are some of the types? So the first one that we are going to look at is the oral reading. Oral reading, or reading aloud. So this is the act of reading to the hearing of another person. So in reading, you open your mouth, you read to an audience, or you can even read to yourself. Yeah, you can even read. When we say reading is an act, it must be learned. If you want to, those who read the news on TV, so day to day you read to yourself, you read to your mirror, and you see how well you read. The newscasters, the journalists, they read the news. When you go to church, you read the Bible, and all those are reading aloud. Where in the classroom, or and then the lecturer says, okay, read this portion of the text. You read aloud to the listening of your audience. You are engaging in reading aloud. Then again, we have the silent reading, and so we know about silent reading already. You alone with your reading material, engaging in the reading activity, you are reading to yourself. So maybe your lips might not necessarily be moving, but you read inwardly to yourself. That's when you want to prepare for an exam, you want to prepare for an interview, you want to prepare for, very soon medicine will be coming, and so you want to do a private study, sit somewhere very quiet, and then trying to imbibe what you have been taught for the first half of the semester. You go and sit somewhere, and then you do silent reading. So as silent reading suggests, with reading within yourself, and so the words may not be heard, but you are doing it. You are reading too. And now in reading silently, you can either do intensive reading or do extensive reading. Intensive reading, as in reading, as example is close reading or academic reading. So with silent reading too, we have two types or two forms. You can do intensive reading or extensive reading under silent reading. So under silent reading, what you are doing is that you are preparing for, as I indicated early on, for an exam, end of semester. So you are going to sit down quietly and do a thorough reading, taking cognizance of how they dot the I, the comma, imbibing concepts, understanding concepts, making meaning out of it, and trying to also paraphrase or summarize what the writer has said. So in reading, intensive reading or close reading or academic reading, as the name suggests, is undertaken for academic purposes, for professional purposes, for vocational purposes. So you have exam coming up, you have an interview coming up, so you learn, you read thoroughly, you concentrate, you make effort to concentrate, and then afterwards you ask yourself a series of questions, just so you've spent hours to read, just so you'll be able to produce at the end of the day what you have learned. And then also we can do the extensive reading under the silent reading. Extensive can also be known as leisure reading or pleasure reading. So you are reading outside the context of what has been taught you. You are reading for pleasure. If you are reading a storybook, you are reading for leisure. You are reading for the purposes of updating your knowledge base, broadening your knowledge base, broadening your horizon. So as I indicated early on, you want to read outside the context of your course of study or program. And so maybe you want to read a storybook, or you've heard of a story or a book that helps maybe how to be a good student. That might not necessarily be part of your program of study or a course, but maybe your lecturer says for you to be a good student, for you to be on top of your game, for you to be an A student, you must do A, B, C, D. And he or she recommends a book. So you decide to read outside. That is reading to broaden your horizon. That is reading to gain more knowledge from other contexts to help you as a student. So by the end of your 4-year stay here, you realize that your knowledge is not only on why you were here. You can go outside other areas. I ask myself, how do you, when you go for an interview or you go and write an exam, those who wrote the professional, mature entrance exam, there is a portion for current affairs. Sometimes current affairs might not necessarily come from what your lecturer teaches you, but it's something that you must acquire as a student. So when they ask you this morning, where is your president? Or where is the president intending to be? Who is the minister of finance? And all those stuff you should know. And no lecturer necessarily will teach you that, but you must learn this outside. And so in doing that, you do that through extensive reading. And as students, you must it's a skill that all of you must acquire. So you must do all these silent, extensive reading to help you broaden your knowledge base, so that you are not just limited to just one thing. Do we get an understanding? Awesome. I believe all of you are following in the discussion. And so that is that for the types of reading that we have. We have talked about oral reading or reading aloud, which is reading to an audience. So for example, the newscasters, reading at church, the Bible, at lecture halls, your lecturer says read something to the hearing of the class, read a portion and all that. So in reading aloud, you read so that someone who is outside can listen, can hear you and follow in the reading. And then we have silent reading, which is also known as closed reading, where you sit down quietly and then become one with the reading material. So that is silent reading for us. And under silent reading, we have spoken about two forms. We have the intensive reading. Under silent reading, we have intensive, just as the name suggests, intensive. So you sit one-on-one with your reading material, with your book, with your note, with your text. You go to the library and then you read, become one with the reading material. So you read. Usually you set a time for yourself, you read, and then make sure you understand what you are reading. Usually it's done for academic, professional, vocational purposes. So you read, make sure you read so that if questions come, you will be able to answer the questions. And then again, under silent reading, we have the extensive reading or reading aloud. Reading wide usually is done for pleasure or leisure, to broaden your horizon. Learn outside the confines of your study area so that you're able to also be abreast of what is happening around you. So as students, we should put it at the back of our heads that we didn't only come to do creative art. So all I do is be in the studio, draw. My graphic design students, all we think about is draw, and that's come up with mind blowing construction or design. But we should be able to, when someone asks you, speak to your design, what vocabulary are you going to use to speak to those designs? Those are vocabularies that you derive from reading outside, reading novels, reading newspapers, reading stuff online, reading articles. All these things are reading extensively, reading for pleasure, reading for leisure. All these things help you to become a better student. We are not saying you are not good, but it makes you better. It makes you the best. It sets you apart from the lot. I always tell students, when we are all of you are grouped there, and they want to take something unique about you, what would they use? The way you speak, the way you are able to even explain issues. And so you should be on top of your game, because you might know the subject matter all right, but someone will say, look, how do I put it, should I put it on paper? That becomes the problem. And I said, yes, because you are limited in scope. You're not reading. You think you will sit down and then all of a sudden the vocabulary will jump into your head. No. And in this era where social media is even making things, I don't know if it's coming to help us or whatever. So we are all doing shorthand messages. We are not really texting in full and all that. So it limits us in a way. So you must read. The act of reading, we can never do away with it. So all these things help us become a better or even best. It brings out the best of ourselves also. So we have looked at what reading is, we have looked at importance, we have looked at types. Now let's look at some of the strategies of reading. Strategies. Now there are two forms primarily. We have skimming and then we have scanning. Skimming and scanning. Anytime there is anything in front of you, how do you engage it? There are two forms. Anytime you see any material that you have not seen before, or even if you have seen and you want to go through, there are two ways of dealing with it. We have skimming. Now, skimming is the act of reading hurriedly to get the general knowledge, to acquire the general knowledge. You want to get the overview of what the material is about. You engage in skimming. For example, you have exam, and then during the exam there's comprehension. And with the comprehension, they say answer the questions. How do you answer the questions? You must read quickly to know what the text is about, what has been put in front of you for you to answer. And when you are doing that, we say you are skimming. So quickly, it's not the time for leisure reading or slow reading, because mind you, you are working with time. And so you read fast, you read quickly, just to be abreast of what the material is about. So, okay, the text in front of me is talking about road safety. So, okay, today we are looking at road safety, and so we are going to answer questions about road safety. That is skimming. There is, you go to the library, you just go through the books there to see what they are. Especially the freshers, they say go to ASANTEWAA, go to ASANTEWAA. Then finally you get the time and you go to ASANTEWAA. You go to your area of study where your program is, the books are situated. And so you going through to see if anything catches your eye is skimming. You are just going through without any particular focus, without any particular purpose. You are just going through. And then in quickly doing that, you are skimming. Back in the day when people went to bookstores to buy books, when we get there and then you see any book of interest and you pick it and you read the back of the book just to know what it's about, you are doing skimming. And so skimming is reading quickly, hurriedly, to get a general information, to get a general context of what the material is about. And once it is what you want, or you feel like it is what you align with, then you sit down to read. So that act is called skimming, reading hurriedly for general information. Do we get it? Are you with me? Good. So as we indicated, in skimming, the aim is to understand or obtain facts, especially when there is not much time to work with. When you don't have time to do a comprehensive reading, a thorough reading, you engage in skimming. And so that is that for skimming. Then we go to the act of the second one, which is also known as scanning. Now, skimming comes in a lot of forms, as I've indicated, a lot of ways. Going through the website, our university website, to just know what is happening in the university. That's skimming. Taking the remote to go through the program lineup to see what programs are airing or will be airing later. It's skimming. Going through a catalog, just flipping through to know what the general thing is about, you are skimming. Going through the options of searching something, in fact, typing something, or even going online and flipping through, you are skimming. So skimming comes in so many forms. So I believe during our face-to-face interactions with students, if we haven't done already, a lot of issues will come up. So that is that for the act of skimming. And then we go to scanning. Also reading hurriedly, rapidly, fast reading in order to obtain a specific information. Specific information. So one major difference between skimming and scanning is that whereas skimming is for the general knowledge, scanning is for a specific, locate a specific idea. So that is that for scanning. So as I use for comprehension activity, when you are doing comprehension during your exam, before you came here, you did skimming to know the general idea, because the essay that has been put, the text that has been put in front of you for the comprehension, you have never encountered before. So you must skim to get the general knowledge, and then you scan for specific. So after you've skimmed to get the general knowledge, you go through, you scan the, you skim the questions that come with it. You skim the questions. Now, once you skim the questions, you go back to the text, and once you go back, you are scanning for specific answers. So that's the difference between skimming and scanning. Specific. You are reading a material, you come across a word, you have never seen that word before. You want to understand the use of that word. So what do? You pick your dictionary, either hard copy or on your phone. Then you locate the word. You understand the meaning of the word. You are scanning. Specific. You are done with your first semester. Then they have posted the results on the notice board. And so what do? You go online, or you go to the notice board, and then quickly you go through. You don't have the pleasure of, you don't even know anybody's index number, right? Good. So you go through, locate your index number, and then the corresponding grade. Whatever it is, you are aware. So specific information. You hear that, oh, there is an information on the notice, on the school's website, that there's an upcoming, there's going to be matriculation for students. And so you want to specifically read and understand what is expected of you as a freshman, freshwoman. And so you go to the website. That is where you have a specific information. So you want to verify. You go to the school's website, and then you check that specific information. You are scanning for information. Are we good on the scanning? So scanning comes in so many forms. Getting telephone number from a phone directory, checking your schedule and agenda for what is expected of you, checking your timetable to even identify what you have for today, how your program is going to be, how your schedule is going to be for the day. You are scanning. Getting a particular information from a text, you are scanning. As I indicated early on, dictionary, you are scanning. And so scanning comes in that form. One major difference, or the major difference between skimming and scanning, is where in skimming is for general information, and in scanning it is for a specific information, or acquiring a specific information. Are you with me? Good. And I believe you are following the discussion this morning about skimming and scanning. Awesome. So now, without wasting my time, we zoom straight away to look at strategies we use to study. Someone will say, Doc, I read a lot. I read so much. But when I read, I am not able to understand, or I don't understand what I read. So what do I do? Techniques in reading. Techniques in reading. How do you read? In reading, how do you make meaning of what you have read? How do you understand? How do you ensure that after reading, whatever you have read does not leave? Does not read in quotes. That when it's time to produce or reproduce what you have read, you'll be able to make meaning of what you have read. So these are some of the techniques. As I always tell students, you might be doing something right. That is why you are here. You may be doing something right. You have read, you have written the exam, you have done all these things, and you've written the exam and you are here. So you must have done something right for you to be here. However, you feel like it's working for you, carry on. If you have your own unique way of reading and understanding, by all means, push through. However, this is an avenue for you to also add on. So some students will challenge you and say, no, but this is how it's done. This is just a technique someone has also sat down to come up with. So for those who are unable to read and make meaning, maybe you can use this to help you. However, if you have your own unique way which is working for you too, by all means, use that. But there is always room to learn more, to add more. So you can also add this, just so it helps you to acquire better knowledge when you read. It helps you strategies or techniques. You have so many which works with any day and anyhow. So you can add this on. So we are going to go through the reading technique, and it's the SQ5R reading technique. SQ5R, as in S and then Q, the letter Q, then 5, it has 5 R's. So we'll go through. Now the SQ5R will work for areas or instances where you have never come across the text. That's the first time you are meeting the text. Do you get it? So when you go to the library and you come across a book, your lecturers have been mentioning a particular book, and then you chance on that book, or you decide that today I'm going to study. So you go to the library and you locate a book in your study area, and you feel like this is a book I want to settle down and read. You will do the SQ5R. However, if you have your own private timetable and then you pick your book and say, today I'm going to read maybe a general course such as GPD 111, you have already determined what you are going to read. So you pick the book and go and read. And in doing that, you will not do the S, you will not do the Q. Do you get it? Good. So for you to do the S and the Q, it's a book that you have never come across. So let's go. So when you go to the library and then you come across a book that you have never seen before, and you want to read that book, the first thing you want to do is survey. You survey your terrain. You assess your terrain. So S, survey. So you look through the shelves. And in doing that, you are surveying. In doing that, you are also doing what? You are skimming. Right? For general information. For a book that would catch your attention. A book that will gain your interest. So you survey. So you go through. Okay. And that is survey. One way or some way, somehow, something will catch your eye, and once it does, you decide, okay, this is what I want to look at. And so once you pick the book, then you leave the survey, and now you are doing questioning. Now you question yourself as well as the book. What is the title of this book? Who is the author or authors? Is the book in my study area? These are questions you ask yourself. And even the date of publication. Is it a book that was published before I was born? Or is it a recent book? So you question yourself, and that is where you undertake the questioning stage. And that is why I indicated early on that if it's a book that is a course material, that you have decided that today I'm picking GPD 111 to study in my private time, you don't question, because you have already, it's a book that you are familiar with. So you don't survey, you don't question. You go right ahead and then you start reading. So that is for that. But if you go to the library and you come across a new book, this is the SQ. So you survey, you identify, you settle on a book, you question yourself. Is it a book in my area? Is it a book that will help me? Because if you don't question yourself and do all these, you realize that you've settled and read, and then through the reading session, you realize, oh, this is not a book that is even of interest. So this book will not help me in any way. And so what do? You have to now go back and look for a new book. Do you get it? But if you had wasted a little time to survey, to question yourself and all that, all those early whatever might be avoided. And so you question yourself. Now once you check or you tick all the boxes, like, oh, this is a good book, this is something in my area, I'm in biology, this will help me, I'm in human resource, this will help me, I'm in physics, this will help me, I'm in social studies, this will help me, I'm in marketing, this will help me, I'm in English, this will help me, then you are good to go. Once you are good to go, now you come and sit down, and then you engage with the first R. You realize that we talked about 5 R's. So the first R is sit down and read. I always tell students, you know yourself, you know the maximum hours, minutes you can go at a time whilst you are doing silent. And this is where you do silent reading. And so you read. If you want to set a timer for yourself that I'm going to do serious intensive reading for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour. You know yourself. And you know the maximum you can go. So sit down and read. Set the timer if possible. And do serious silent reading for 1 hour. For 2 hours, if you can go that long. But sometimes you realize that you sit down for that long, and then everything that goes in is you're not listening, you're not reading anything, it's trash. So set a timer. Don't look at someone who is doing something and try to copy. Do you. Do what works for you. That's why I indicated earlier on that know thyself. You know the capacity at this point in your life, university. You should know your capacity. Some are able to study in noisy environment. Some people the whole world must sleep So know how you want to study a quiet environment, because here, mind you, you are doing intensive. You are paying attention to the writer's unique way of writing. You are paying attention to context. You are paying attention to how eyes and dotted eyes and how commas, the writer's unique way of writing. So you must pay close attention and read. You don't read 2 minutes, take your phone. 3 minutes, take your phone. Take picture, take a call, text. So as much as possible, keep your phone, be off your phone for at least 1 hour. The world will not come to an end. You go to the library and then you imbibe, become one with the reading material, and then you read. So that is the first hour. So after you have finished reading, done the 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours, however you read, then you go to the second hour. So read. The second hour is reflect. Now, after reading about the topic, the context, and everything, think about asking yourself how this material that you read, how it resonates with you. How does it resonate with you? Does it corroborate something you have heard before? Is it aligning with something that you have heard? Does it align with something that you know in the world already? Is it affirming what you have heard? Oh, okay, that is why this is done. Oh, okay, so reflect on what you have done. And that is the second R. Reflect. Now the third R is record. And then in recording, this is where you try to scribble something, jot down something. And you try to do that from your memory. So ask yourself, what did I just read? What are the main points? What is the writer trying to communicate? What is he saying? What did I take home from this material? Am I able to, off-head, easily recall salient points from what I have just read? Record it. Write it down. Write it down. And so in doing that, you're also trying to work on your memory to see how best you were able to understand what was read. So in recording, you don't look into the material to record. You are doing it off-head, right from your memory. And you try and search your brain and see how best you were able to study. And so that is the third R, record. Then we go to the fourth R, which is, so you do read, you do reflect, you do record, then you do recall. Recall. And so you recall by usually saying it aloud. So if you have a friend, you just tell your friend, Charlie, I've gone to read this. Let me just tell you what I've read. You can even recall to your friend by talking to yourself. Okay, so I learned A, B, C, D. And the A, B, C, D, it says it has 3 concepts. The concepts are I. And all these 3 concepts talked about 3 different dimensions to A. And that is why A is like that, looking at the 3 concepts. And you do that. Or you can even recall to a friend. And then you try to recall the key facts. You go over what you have learned. You try to reproduce the content by not looking at what you learned, or what you have learned. So you do that off-head. You're trying to challenge your brain. You're going into your brain to bring out what, and that's why I indicated that when you are doing that read, you must be devoid of all unnecessary distractions, and then pay close attention to the text. Become one with the text. If you are reading and it's not going, go back and read again. And so you read. You get it? And so once you read and you know that this one you have been able to consume well, then you reflect, record, recall to a friend, recall to yourself by saying it loud, recall to class, even if your lecturer is not in and you want to recall to your members, you can do that until you record, and do not go through. Now in recalling, you go over and over and over till you feel like you're comfortable with the material that you have learned. Right? Good. Now you come to the last R, which is review. Now after going over, you can now decide, going through these steps, you can now decide that, okay, at this point I want to go back to the text and read. You can do that immediately by skimming through to see if all ideas I put down during the record stage are correct, or you can close it, step away, 2-3 days later, you come and review the document again. You come back and refresh your memory. Usually you have one course per day or per week, right? And so students, what they do is after the end of the lecture, they go away. No. Expert says after the lecture, spend about 1 hour and go like this, what we have done, the 5 hour. Read what the lecturer just taught you. Go over. Become one. As I always tell students, you know yourself and how best, those who struggle. And that's how come you do 13-14 weeks of serious academic work, and you want to compile all of them. You want to push all of them into 2-3 days of activity, studies. It doesn't work that way. You are hurting your brain. Your brain will fail you. So immediately you are done with the lecture, spend some time, go over. Especially when you have in between time, you have time before the next lecture. However, if there is no lecture, there's a lecture immediately, fine. Then you can do that maybe later on in the evening. But go make sure you read over what you have done immediately. And go through these 5 stages of reading, reflecting, recording, recalling, reviewing, so that it helps you. And then before you go, you go back to the next week's lecture, you read over again, right? But students will never do that. Once they close the book, they are done. So the next time they have a lecture, then they go and sit at the lecture hall and be looking at the lecturer's face, as if the concept they taught, the topic they taught, whatever they taught, they have never heard of it before. If you do that, you are setting yourself back, way back. And so to be a good student, you must always try to be in tune, to be one with the material that you read. Always, always, always. So review, as I indicated. You can review immediately when there is time, or you can set a time, 3 days, 2 days, or make sure before the next lecture you review that topic, or that topic that you have gone to read about. So that is for the SQ 5R reading technique. Some people can do SQ 3R, where they do survey, question, read, recall, review. Some people can do SQ 2R. Some people can do SQ 4R. It is a technique. It is supposed to help you when you find difficulty in reading and understanding. And so how best you want to use this, it's up to you. Even if you do well with SQ, of course you cannot do 1R. When you read, you must go through something. So you do how you want to use this material for, how best you want to know yourself, and try and make sure that it helps you in reading. So that is the SQ 5R reading strategy. As I indicated, if it's a material that you know already, you are conversant with that material, you will not do the SQ 5R. If you are going to study for exam, you just go straight away and do the 5R. Read, reflect, record, recall, review. So you come, especially when you have set a timetable for yourself, later you come back, you take it, you read, then you go on. You go on, you go on. So you see that when it's time for exam, you see that off head, there are certain things, certain concepts that you can quickly say it off head. It comes to you naturally because you have become one over and over and over time with that piece of information. It doesn't become new anymore. But if you don't visit it at all, that's when you go back to it, it becomes new to you. And so when you are learning, it's like you have never seen that information before. Do we understand? Good. And I believe you are following in the techniques. There are certain areas that, of course, I'm leaving for the in-person. So when you meet your lecturers face to face, they will throw more light because it's easier or better than face to face. Then we end the discussion with some reading faults. Sometimes in our reading activity, there are certain things that we do that are considered faults. And so when you read, especially when we are reading, when people are around, silent reading, reading aloud, there are certain things that we do that which are considered faults. At this level, the university level, nobody expects you to do that. So once you engage with those things, they are considered faults. So you must, if you know yourself and you know that you are doing one or two of them, try and make a conscious effort to stop it or limit the amount of times you do it. You know yourself, you know you are fond of doing one of these things. Just alert a friend. Charlie, when I'm reading or when I'm doing this and you are close or you are stuck, you are just beside me, prompt me. Or when you are with someone and you know you do stuff, you just let the person know. If you realize that I'm doing ABC, kindly prompt me so that I'll be conscious of what I'm doing. So reading faults, there are habits that as a result or more or less waste time or prevent acquisition of information if possible. So there are habits that we have developed over the time that when we do or we engage in them, it wastes time whilst we are reading. It slows down the reading process. It makes reading boring. If someone is listening to us and we are reading and we are engaging in these faults, it slows down the reading process. It makes the reading boring when someone is listening to us. Have you been at a program where when someone is reading and then all the listeners are yawning and they can't sit quiet, like they are tired. The way the person is reading is rather making them tired. Have you realized that a lot of times? Yes. As we indicated in the beginning of the lecture, we said reading is an act. It must be learned. It's a skill. You must learn it. You must practice it. So that when you are reading, you sustain your reader's interest. You whet their interest with the tone of your voice, how you raise your voice at a point when you want to make emphasis, you raise your voice. And when you want to, you lower your voice. It's an act. You need to. When you are reading obituary for a tribute or something, the way you raise your voice, you lower your voice, it's all an act. So it's a skill you must learn. So that's that. If you are reading aloud or silent reading and then you are engaging in some of these things, you must do well to put a stop to it or limit the amount of times you do that. So let's quickly go through and then we call it a day. The first one that we are going to look at is reading head movement. Head movement. You realize that in times when we read, what we usually do is that the eyeball must read. The eye must pick the information and read. So only the eyeball must read. But have you seen an instance where someone is reading aloud, reading at church, or someone is delivering the State of the Nation address, addressing the media or something, the person is reading and the head is moving as well as whatever. Have you seen some before? Yes. And even as when we were little children, you realize you were mimicking what your teachers were doing or stuff like that. That is head movement. It's considered a reading fault. So if you know that when you are reading, you move your head as well as some people will not focus on what you are reading, but the movement of your head. You see how unconsciously it happens. And so once people are, of course, when people are reading, the focus is on you. So everybody is looking at you and what you are doing. And so you are moving the head. And so they're also moving their head at the point they lose concentration and they focus on the movement that you are doing. So head movement. Once you know you are doing that, only the eye must move. Only the eye must move. So you roll the eye in the eyeball to pick at words. Your head stays focused on the material. So either you as I said, it's a skill. So you pick the information, you raise your head and you say it. You look down, you pick the information, you raise your head. That is different from when you are moving your head with during the face-to-face. Let your lecturers go through more with you, and then you see how best. There will be activities that some of them will even take you through, just so you know that you are part of those who do that. And it's very, very interesting. So try and avoid head movement. Only your eyes should move. You do not move your body, you do not move your head. Do we get it? The only part of your body whilst you are reading aloud that should move should be your eyes. So that is that for head movement. Then we go to vocalization, from the word vocal. Vocalization. This is where you are reading words aloud to the hearing of your reader and to others, especially when the intention is to do silent reading. You go to the library, you want to study, but what do you end up doing? You are reading the words aloud to the hearing of. Now, when you go to the library, you're not supposed to make noise, right? It's different when you are outside and you are reading aloud to yourself. That is different. But when the aim is to do silent reading in the library or somewhere safe or somewhere among people, and then you realize that you'll be reading silently, then you catch yourself reading audibly, saying the words out loud to others. If you do this during silent reading, it doesn't help. It disturbs all those around you. It disturbs them. It makes them uncomfortable, especially if you are doing silent reading, because the person is there to read, become one. Then you end up reading aloud. Then they will stop what they're doing and then they are listening to you. So sometimes when you go to the library and some people are looking at you strangely, it's because you are doing some of these things. So as I indicated, let someone just alert you or be conscious of it, or let someone prompt you and say you are doing this, and then you stop. So vocalization. When you are doing silent reading, everything must be in the head. You don't audibly say anything. But that is different from when you are outside, you are studying on your own, and then you decide at a point in time you want to say something loud for yourself. Maybe you are sleeping, so you decide that, okay, let me say this out loud so I might not sleep. That is intentional. That is different. We are not considering that. You get it? Awesome. So that is when you are doing silent reading. I'm emphasizing on it because some people will come back and ask you that what about? What about is what I'm saying, that if you are doing silent reading in a library, you do not do vocalization where you either consciously or unconsciously say the words out loud. So that is vocalization. Then we go to sub-vocalization. Sub-vocalization, you do not pronounce the words audibly, out loud, but you'll be whispering. And it happens a lot of times. When during a reading, maybe a class, a lecture, there's a particular portion your lecturer wants you to read from a text and says, okay, let's open to page maybe 79 of so and so book. All right, so I'm giving you 5 minutes. Let's all do a close reading or silent reading of that text. 5 minutes. Let's go. Then you see that people are doing. Sometimes if you don't take that, you see that the whole lecture room is doing. That's why I said your lecturers will take you through. So you see that all of you will be doing, even though you are doing silent reading, you are doing sub-vocalization, whispering the words. But in doing silent reading, you are not supposed to do either that, either vocalization or sub-vocalization. Your lips should be sealed. And then you say that you read in your head. You become one with the words or whatever has been written in the book. You don't do sub. And so the moment you do, you are doing sub-vocalization. It's a reading fault. It's very, very distracting. So if you are in the library and you are doing that, to know that you are disturbing those around you. And even you yourself in reading, you realize that once you are done with the reading, you can't even focus. You can't even, if they ask you, what did you just read? You can't even sum it up for anybody. Try that and see. And so if you are also engaging in that, try and avoid doing sub-vocalization. It's a reading fault. As I said, nobody would imprison you if you engage in these things, but it's considered a fault. And so if you do that, try as much as possible to put a stop to it. And then we go to the third one, which is pointing at words. Pointing at words, whether we are doing silent reading or reading aloud. See that some people, when they are reading, as old as they are, a DCE, an MCE, an MP somewhere, big man, you've been invited to a program, and then you are giving a speech. Usually they write the speech for them. And once they are reading, what are they doing? You see that they use their hands, and then they are pointing at that. You come way beyond that. If you point at words, it's children who are learning to read, who are taught to do that, point at words to help them follow. But as we have already learned, as at our age, when we are reading at this point, it's only the eyes that must read. So if you are pointing at, you are the type that is pointing at words, stop it. That is also different from when you intentionally want to point at a word to a friend and say, okay, this is it. That's different. But you are reading the Bible. Our first reading is taken from them. You see that your hand. So you see, you realize your reading at the word will be based on how your hand goes, and so it slows down the reading. Once the reading, every reading must flow, but if you are pointing it, you slow down. So it says, our first reading, because of you are using your hand, is taken from Luke chapter 11 verse, whilst your hand is moving. And so pointing at words is also a reading fault. So if you are engaged in that, you should make a conscious effort not to use your hands to guide you. At this level, it's a no. You've gone beyond that. But if you are a teacher back in the primary creche, JHS, and you are helping students to read, the slow learner to read, and you are using the hand, that is okay, but not for you as the adult. Do we get it? Awesome. Then we go to regression. Regression will only come about when the reader is tired. That is all, when you are tired. You see that when you are reading, there are times when you'll be doing silent reading. Now, instead of you finish one line, instead of going to the next line, somewhere, somehow, your eyes go back. It goes back to the first sentence you read. It can happen twice, thrice. It happens a lot of times. So once it happens like that, you are reading and then you see that your eyes are going back to the first sentence you read. It's going back again. It's going back again. It's an indication that you're tired. It's just tiredness. It's what you do is maybe you take a break, you walk a little, if possible, you take a rest, sleep or something. Once you are refreshed and you come back, then you are good to go. So regression only happens when you are tired. That is also different from when there is a concept, when there is a definition, and you want to make a conscious effort to imbibe the definition. So you go over the definition, you go over it, or you go over and over and over and over. That is different. You read, when you finish, you want to go over it. When you finish, you want to go over it. When you finish, you want to go over it, because you want to really understand what is expected of you. When you do that, that is different. But regression, as I said, only happens when you are tired. Unconsciously, you see that you go, your eyes will go back to the word you read. Then you say, hey, then it will go back. Then it will go back. Tiredness. So that is regression. And then you have fixity of gaze or fixation. Reading word for word. Reading word for word. So when you are speaking, one is expected. What is your name? My name is AKOSUA ANANE. With fixity or fixation, what you see is that you are reading 1, 1, 1. So my name is, that's fixity. You don't do that. When you are reading, you read in chunks. You read in sentences. You don't read word for word. It doesn't flow. That's how come when you are reading and people are listening to you, you tire them. They become tired. It makes it boring. They don't want to read. So in class, if you would notice, when they ask someone, a particular person to read, see that the whole class will say, no, let this person read, because that person does well with the reading. As we have already indicated, reading is a skill. And so if you engage in all these things, we are saying that they are faults. One, why is it considered a fault? They slow down the reading process, they slow down the reading speed, they prevent understanding of the text, they make the reading process boring, they reduce retention and recall. So all these things slows down the reading process. So if you're engaging in all these, you try as much as possible to put a stop to it. Conscientize yourself, and then you try to limit the amount of time. Hopefully you do not. So once you have been introduced to these ideas, you would make a conscious effort to stop them. So this one we have looked at developing reading skill. So I will end here and invite questions if there are any. We have looked at developing reading skill. We have looked at the fact that reading is a process. It's part of our everyday activity. In fact, there is no way that you would be walking around and not read. You read art. You read art. You see an art and you try to make meaning out of it. You are reading. You read signpost. You read signboard. You read telephone numbers. You read directory. It's a process. Again, it's a skill that everybody You must learn. If you want to be a good reader, especially when in terms of public speaking, you want to learn the act. You can read to your friend, you can read in front of a mirror, you can record now with the advent of technology, you can record yourself while you are reading. And see how you best you read, and see if you engage in some of these faults. We have looked at the types of reading that we have. We have looked at reading aloud and silent reading. Reading aloud from the name, audibly reading to the hearing of someone. We have also looked at silent reading, where you read to yourself. Now we have looked at the fact that with silent reading we have two types. We have extensive reading and intensive reading. Just as the name it says, extensive is reading just for pleasure, for leisure, broaden your knowledge base and stuff like that. That is reading aloud. Especially when you come back from a lecture, you are so tired, you are lying on your bed, and sleep is not readily available, it's not coming readily. You can pick some material and decide, oh, let me just read. And so as you are reading, you see that sleep catches up on you and then you fall asleep. That is extensive reading. Then we have intensive reading, where you are reading word for word, close reading. See the writer's unique way of writing is jibing. Because you have an exam coming up, you have a quiz coming up, you have an interview coming up, you are researching to be able to know your subject matter, to reproduce it. So under every circumstance or every type of reading, you know what you want to gain from it, so you engage in the reading. And we have also looked at the fact that in reading, it comes in two types. You can skim, you can scan. Where when you skim, you are reading hurriedly for general information, and then when you scan, you are reading hurriedly also for a specific information. And we have looked at the various components under each type of reading. We also identified what is there. So we open the phone lines, any calls, any text message. If there's nothing, then we bring the lecture to you. Okay, so Facebook is buzzing. Okay, so Richie is online. Agricultural science is duly represented. Big ups to you. Good morning, Doc. I'm Tamaklo Francis from Agricultural Education Department. Hello, good to have you. Nelly Enin says, I'm Nelly from Environmental Science. Awesome. Great. Yeah. Great lecture. Thank you very much. Okay, good morning. Lord, good. I'm glad I'm communicating to some audience this morning. Good morning. Okay, so Faculty of Mathematics is duly represented. Enjoy your lecture, Dr. AKOSUA. Great to have all of you. Awesome. Special education is duly represented. Good. Thank you all for coming. We are so grateful. It's good to have our students online and following in the discussion. Beautiful. So this morning we have looked at developing reading skills. So we'll call it a day, and then during our face-to-face interaction, probably more issues will come up if they have not already. I know we are behind one lecture, so probably they have all done it during the face-to-face interaction. That's why no new stuff is coming. So in the absence of any questions or phone in this morning, we have looked at developing reading skills. I wish you all a beautiful day and weekend. Be good. And from the studios of Radio Windy Bay 98.3, we call it a day. Thank you.